This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermasterclass.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you eliminate chaos, maximize profits on your projects. Got a great interview for you today with construction attorney Karalynn Cromeens from Houston, Texas. And here's what you're going to get out of this. You're going to learn why there's no room for charity in a business transaction. You'll explain the first rule of subcontracts according to Karalynn, some misconceptions about subcontracts. You'll learn about how liens actually work behind the scenes, why they're so effective, and how they can be your leverage. Why, if you're a subcontractor, you should walk into every subcontract expecting to negotiate. We'll talk about some negotiation strategies that you can use, some clauses that you should look out for, some red flags to watch out for in subcontract agreements, how to establish trust between GCs and subcontracts. We spent some time talking about pay when paid clauses and what to watch out for. And then we'll talk about how Karalynn says that, quote, the bid and the scope are never the same, and how she's had some clients lose their entire business because they didn't realize this. Karalynn will also talk about the Subcontractor Institute that she has started and her book, Quit Getting Screwed. Great title. Great interview. You're going to get a lot out of this. Before we get into that interview, I have a couple of resources that I want to share with you. Listen up. All right, I want to talk about something that is plaguing the construction industry, especially on the residential side. There's one particular issue that's at the root cause, that is the root cause of a lot of your issues, potentially. It's also forcing a lot of people to work for free when they don't have to. The problem is these two words, free estimates. Look, if you're a general contractor and you're frustrated with your subs' productivity, or you're frustrated about their ability to meet a scheduled date, think about this. How much time are they spending pricing jobs for you that never go anywhere? And think about all the other GCs and builders that they're pricing work for. How much time did you waste in the last month on meetings, conversations, doing free design work and free estimates on projects that didn't go anywhere? And then what could you have accomplished with that time? Custom home builders tell me they spend 30 to 40 hours putting together an estimate on a house. That's a tragedy to throw 30 or 40 hours a week, 30 or 40 hours of work away. And then lastly, how many profit bleeds are you dealing with that can be traced back to a lack of planning on the front end? How many awkward conversations did you have with clients because of allowances that were off or things that were missed in your estimate? Think about this. What if you could get paid for estimates? What if you could stop wasting your time on tire kickers and price checkers? What if you could stop wasting your subs' time and you could eliminate a lot of those profit bleeds? Well, here's the deal. A growing number of builders, remodelers, and even commercial general contractors are ending the practice of free estimates. A client of mine named Chris told me just the other day that he collected over $8,000 in pre-construction fees the first half of this month. Back in episode 190 of this podcast, Travis Gardner talked about how he collected $10,000 in pre-construction fees the first month he made the switch and decided to end the practice of doing free estimates. Don't send out another free estimate until you watch this free training video that I put together for you with 3 questions you can ask to show your prospect the value of paying you for an estimate. You can go to buildermasterclass.com/script to watch it. Go get your free training video over at buildermasterclass.com/script. What's holding you back from experiencing hypergrowth in your construction business? Likely, it's poor cash flow. It happens all the time. Moving money from one project to fund materials for your next, but that's all changing. Build will pay your suppliers in cash up front and then extend you 120-day terms. Finally, a pay-when-paid solution for contractors so you can experience the confidence to bid on projects you never thought you could. They hear it all the time. Quote, "I wish I heard about Build sooner." So what are you waiting for? Head over to build.com/CLE and have your materials funded as quickly as same day. You can also check out their project cash flow estimator to calculate how much cash you're going to need to start your next commercial project. That's BILLD.com/CLE. All right, now let's get to my interview with construction attorney Karalynn Cromeens. Might want to take notes. Okay, Karalynn, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Always good to have a pro contractor construction attorney on board. I've worked with, maybe against, quite a few attorneys. So I appreciate you being on the contractor side. So we're going to talk about subcontracts, establishing trust, how to solve some of the problems that exist between subcontractors and general contractors. But I want to start with this. You say that, well, I'll just ask this question. What is the first rule of subcontracts?
Well, the first rule is that there are no rules. And I think a lot of people that are subcontractors and very good at the work that they do walk into a transaction thinking somebody else is protecting them, that there's a set of laws that people have to abide by when it comes to a subcontract. And that's just not the case. I mean, a regular contract attorney, if they ever have the chance to read a subcontract, they would throw it away and tell nobody ever to sign it because they couldn't even fix it. They're so one-sided. So I want people to know that there's nobody out there looking out for you. And I hope to bring tools that can help you negotiate your own contract.
I remember, this reminds me of a conversation I had back when I was managing commercial projects. It was a hospital edition. And my site work guy, Taylor Brothers Excavating was the name of the company. It was a family-owned business, multi-generation. And Dave came to me when it was time to sign the contract and said, and these are his exact words. This was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million contract for him, which was big for a small business. And he said, "You know what? You seem like a good guy. Is there anything in this subcontract I should be concerned about?" And I said, "Yeah, a lot. There's a lot. So yeah, I am a good guy, but you need to read your subcontract and make sure you get it." So yeah, I think that's unfortunate, but true. People think there must be some governing body out there that makes the GCs refer to when they put their subcontract agreements together. And the fact is, it's not. If he or she who puts together the agreement typically weights it in their favor. So what are some of the other misconceptions, the common misconceptions that are out there other than, hey, there must be somebody out there watching out for us? Are there any other big misconceptions that come to mind about subcontract agreements?
One of the bigger misconceptions is that you're hired to do your bid. And I've seen so many of my clients either have to spend more money or completely go out of business because the bid and the scope are two very different things. You know, you submit your bid, and if you're smart, you do it itemized. I agree to do all this for this bottom line price. And the GC accepts it, and then they send you a subcontract. And everybody just assumes I sent my bid, so that's what the contract's on. But at the end of the day, if you get in a dispute, your bid is nowhere in those documents. You're agreeing to do what's in the scope, which even if it wasn't out of malice, has changed since you submitted your bid just by, request for information and different things, and the plans being updated has changed. So the first thing I tell my clients to do, and the book lays out, is that when you get a subcontract, review the scope as if you were doing a new bid and see if it matches the original bid. If not, find out where the difference is. Don't just sign the subcontract.
Yeah. Do you have any examples that you can share of what this might look like? Any case studies?
I have had a few clients. There's one story in the book. There's a few stories, actually. It can range all the way from, I had one, let's see, the other day, and I'm trying to remember, but the example in the book is, I have a door contractor. He's always installed just the doors. And in the scope was the electronic parts for the door. And he came to my office. They're like, they're calling me in default because I'm not going to do these electronic parts. I didn't bid that. And of course, once we went through his contract, there it was. And in that, it was a minor, it cost him $3,000 or $4,000. I had another AC contractor that, just assumed he bid $200,000 worth of work. He did, in his bid, he just said, I'll do all the AC work on this project. Turns out after he signed the scope, he had missed something huge, like $100,000. And he had a bond on that project. They filed on his bond. The bond paid out and put his company out of business. So it happens all the time. And it makes sense logically. You do a bid, you're hired to do the bid. You don't expect basically a counter offer to come in the subcontract, but that's what happens.
Yeah. So you submit the bid, subcontract agreement comes in, and the assumption is that it's based on the bid, but that's not necessarily the case, because what's happening on the GC side is they are assigning risk. They're breaking up that project into individual components. And if it's in the bid, if your bid matches that scope, great. But chances are there are going to be some other things. I know I've had plenty of scope review meetings, and hopefully good GCs will have those conversations and walk through those things and say, hey, are you sure you have this? But on a public bid project where the GC is at risk, and they've signed a contract, they're just going to shove it down your throat, basically, because that's just the nature of the beast.
I agree. And they promised a project at a price that is part of your subcontract, and and people end up getting burned that way.
Yeah. Yeah. This may be kind of a curveball, but one of the common issues I hear from subcontractors I work with is, how do I deal with schedule changes? Because maybe it's a big project. I'll give you an example. One of my clients was a framing contractor in Colorado, and he bid on this project to be done in, say, the summer of 2019. And by the fall of 2020, it still wasn't done. And then suddenly they come in and say, all right, you need to start this work in 2 weeks. And it's a year and a half later than what he expected. There have been material price increases, labor costs have gone up. How can subcontractors protect themselves? Well, first of all, two-part question. What are the big risks that subs need to protect themselves against when it comes to schedule delays, or that are caused by schedule delays? And number two, what can they do to protect themselves from those risks?
The first thing is, don't be quiet about it. And when I say don't be quiet, don't just accept it. At this point, you've already signed the contract. You're on the project. You need a paper trail. I'm not saying they're going to grant you the request, but if you have a paper trail of things that are going on during the project while it's going on, where you can show, hey, I documented this. It's not my fault. I'm trying to get out there to perform. You're not ready for me. That is priceless. The other thing that they need to do is, when they're negotiating the subcontract, I've talked about this in the book, there is a provision in there that and most subcontracts, I've always seen it, that excludes the subcontractor from being able to get extra charges if something happens which increases the cost of their work, like the prices of material goes up or something like that. And so we need to find that provision before they sign it and say, hey, if this happens and there's more than a 3% increase, I have the right to increase my subcontract price. And usually we put like a time frame, like, this price is good for 6 months. If not, we'll look at it again, or if there's a price increase by the time. So the main thing is, I know that there is a fear that if you say something, that they will hire somebody else, or they won't use you the next time. And there's got to be a balance there. It's not worth having a customer if it's going to cost you money. So you need to make that known, and you need to work, on the front end, negotiate that. If you haven't, the best thing you can do is keep a paper trail. If I sent this email on this day, emails work, text message, daily reports are a great way to say, I tried to get out here. This is what happened on this day and why it couldn't work. Because what I see happen is you get to the end of the project and all of a sudden you get a letter, you're $10,000 in delay damages because you didn't complete your schedule on time. And you're like, but I had all these other delays. But at this point, it's your word against theirs. Even if it's just, I sent an email and there's no response. When it comes down to it, you'll have your paper trail that's made when it's going on, which is much better than at the end of the project.
Speaking of the end of the project, what happens so many times, especially in a contentious relationship, is the GC gets to the end of the project. Maybe there are some liquidated damages. There's some extra costs that they incur, and they just go into a room and they distribute those costs to their subcontractors, and say, you know what, steel erector, you were whatever, a week late, and you're going to take your pro rata portion of liquidated damages, and we had these extras, we're going to back charge you. So I'll tell you what it comes down to is we're withholding your retainage, and we have $300,000 of retainage, and we're going to withhold $50,000, let's say, out of your retainage. So either accept the back charges, or you don't get your money. It's kind of a hostage situation, which is unfortunate, but it's common, especially on big projects. And this can happen a year or two after somebody finishes their work. What can subcontractors do what do they do in that situation, first of all, and then we'll talk about what they can do to prevent that from happening. So if somebody's in that situation right now, what advice would you give them?
You have to, what I would do personally, I'd leave the job and tell you, screw you, but that's not but then I'm opening once I have a lien, I have some leverage. You got to take into account time is money. And I know that these guys, if it's $300,000, they need that money. And so they got to weigh your options. Me, I got all the time, and if I could pick anything, I would lien the project and move forward a collection of the whole thing. And the sooner you lien it, the sooner you would give the owner notice that there's an issue, so you can get paid directly from the owner. But that would also burn a bridge. And so, it's got to be on a case-by-case basis. What is this client worth for you? How much do you need this cash now? I mean, this is not an uncommon thing. A lot of big projects end with the GC not paying anybody retainage and see who liens the project. And then we'll wait 6 months and we'll negotiate them down to 10%. And it's just, that's a horrible way to do business. And we see it happen all the time. Unfortunately, there's no quick answer. You're not going to go to court and you're not going to win right away. And so all those things need to be taken into consideration, really on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. I said, the fiery person in me would be just like lean it and sue them, but that's not the best business decision.
Yeah. So what are a few key parts of the process that people should embrace to avoid being in that situation, or at least be in a position of strength if that situation arises at the end of a project?
Well, I know the laws of Texas, but every state has lien laws, and there's nothing better than having a valid lien. And every state does it differently because that gives you so much leverage. You are now in contact with the GC's customer. And I don't say this lightly because I know it pisses everybody off. But if you want to avoid being in that situation you just described, have a valid lien. And have it timely, so that has to be taken care of. Because at least in Texas, if before the owner can pay out retainage to the GC, they have to make sure all the subs are paid. And so you can get paid directly from the owner. They have some pretty complicated laws here, but I know every state has them. Do them correctly. I would recommend doing it with an attorney that knows your area. Do not trust all the online lien services, because they do them all the same for the 50 states and they're all different. And I've, had clients that have had big losses from not doing it. You have to do it correctly. But if you do it correctly, it is great leverage and will prevent a situation like this.
Yeah. Let's talk about what happens behind the scenes that makes liens so effective at shaking the tree from an owner's perspective. I've been an owner's rep, so I know how that stuff happens. But for those who aren't familiar, what goes on behind the scenes with when a notice of a lien or a lien shows up that makes them so effective at getting the owner's attention?
Well, it kind of boils down to what a lien is exactly, right? Although there's lots of risk in construction law, a lien takes the amount that you're owed from being an unsecured, basically like the same thing as a credit card debt, to being a secured debt, like a mortgage on a property. So you have an interest in the property you worked on to the value that you've improved the property. Now, like I said, each state has different laws on how to do that effectively. But what that does is normally a subcontractor only can go against the person who hired them, the general contractor, to collect their money. But now you have another party. You file a lien, you can enforce that lien against the owner via lawsuit or what the state calls for. And it's has a lot of authority, a lot of leverage. They can't sell the property with a lien on it unless it's, bonded or, taken care of beforehand. Banks are not happy with liens, right? Every loan document says the owner won't let liens on the property, so it pisses off banks. And normally, if a project is in construction financing, before it goes to permanent financing, there's another closing. And if that happens, then all the liens in between the construction financing, the permanent financing have to be taken care of. And for an owner to get, that's where they want to get the fastest, and you're holding up that process. And so the owner will cram it down the GC's throat saying, hey, you need to take care of this. And so instead of just a sub saying, pay me, you got the sub saying, pay me, but now you got the owner saying, pay them or I'm not going to pay you. And so you have it both ways. And so there's amazing leverage, and I highly recommend that everybody know how to file a lien in their state.
Yeah. And my advice would be to start, for example, I did a lot of work in Ohio, and Ohio has pretty robust lien laws that, well, actually, they're probably more robust in the project owner's favor because they require filing a notice of commencement with the local county office saying, hey, we're going to start this project. We're going to be furnishing. Maybe it's a notice of furnishing, and these things that have to happen before you start work or within a certain amount of time of starting work. So yeah, get to know your state lien laws. Make sure you follow it on every project. Don't wait until your client is 45 days late to start doing the research. I've even had, I remember an elevator subcontractor that I worked with, when they sent an invoice in, they sent a notice of lien with their invoice every time. It was part of their accounts receivable process. Was, we're going to send you a pay request and a notice of lien that says, if you don't pay it in this amount of time, we're filing a lien. So it seems harsh, but from a risk standpoint, if you take the emotion out of it, it makes a lot of sense. So good advice there. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Anything else about liens that folks need to know about?
Well, and my point there, which is going to be, is that if you don't get paid the amount that you're owed, it's like taking food off of your table and just giving it away. Mm-hmm. And especially at the end of the project, so few people make more than 10% profit on a project that if you just walk away from retainage or your last payment, there's all your money. You can't just leave it on the table. So knowing what those steps are on the front end, it's nothing personal. This is business. If you want to, there's no room for charity in a business transaction.
There's no room for business or charity in a business transaction. I like that. All right. Another statement you make is that you should walk into every subcontract expecting to negotiate. I think this surprises people. What are some of the things we'll get to some of the clauses to really focus on, like pay when paid, but what are some good basic negotiation strategies that you can offer to contractors when they're negotiating a contract?
Don't be afraid of it. I know that it's intimidating. There's a lot of language in there that you don't understand, but if most of these, once you see them and you learn to know what to look for, they'll look the same. They might be worded a little different, but they'll look the same. And once you realize the dangerous ones, then you know how to protect yourself. But I don't think the subcontract got so out of hand out of malice. I think somebody had an attorney write a contract, and attorneys will put everything in there because a negotiation happens and it'll be taken out. But in this case, nobody negotiated them. They wanted the work. They signed the subcontract. So things like the prime contract being incorporated into your subcontract that you've never seen. You have no idea what it says is the norm. I mean, how can we, because and basically what it is, an attorney's like, okay, here's a catch-all. If I miss something, it'll be here. And the new one I've started seeing is reasonably inferred. Anything that could be reasonably inferred from this plans or specs. I'm like, what? This is a written contract. Nothing should be reasonably inferred. You should tell me what I need to do. I mean, yeah. So if you take, if you take the time to know what you're looking for, you can do this. You can definitely do it. And like I said, I'm on a mission, and I know you're going to talk about this. And the trust relationship is we can have an in plain English subcontract where both sides understand. I don't know how we've gotten to this place where, we just sign it because we don't know what it says and we're afraid of it. And it doesn't have to be that way.
So let's talk about negotiation. I had a client of mine who sent me his subcontract agreement that he signed off on months before, and it said that the prime contract between the GC and the owner became part of the subcontract agreement. So if something like that shows up on a subcontract before you sign it, how do you recommend going about negotiating that? Do you slam your fist on the table and say, you son of a bitch, you're trying to screw me, there's no way I'm doing business with you? Do you take a different approach? How would you recommend somebody deal with a clause like that in a subcontract agreement?
Well, I think you can negotiate and not be like, I'm not doing business with you. This is because, number one, the GC more than anything doesn't want you to know what their contract amount is for. So the first thing you can do is say, hey, I really don't want this to be in here, but if you're going to keep it, I at least need to see a copy of it. Send me a copy of the general contract so I know what it says. And most of them will be like, hey, I don't know if I want to share that with you at that point, and take it out. I mean, and just so that's one way to do it. You can just scratch it out and sign it and send it back. And if you start work, then that's the agreement that you're under. I don't think you have to scream and throw a fit. I think if you would point out to a general contractor, hey, and most of them don't even know that it's in there. Like the project manager or whoever you're working with isn't. You say, hey, how can you hold me responsible to this contract if I've never seen? If there's something in here you want to add to my contract, let's talk about it. But a whole document that has all different requirements that like I said, you can have liquidated damages in that contract and mine doesn't. You can still hold me responsible. So those are some different ways. I would just be like, hey, you want me to be responsible for this? Then I need to see a copy, and most of them say they'll provide it. I don't think they've ever been called to task with, hey, give me a copy, because they might, not want to do that at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Typically, the way it works, the buyout process works is there's a subcontract agreement template somewhere, and they go into Procore or CoConstruct or their software of choice, and they fill in a few blanks with the subcontractor's information, and they copy and paste the scope of work, and then all this boilerplate language is in there, and they don't really look at it. So it's a good point. What I've found that works well, if I find something, when I've run into clauses that were just really onerous, I'll say, hey, tell me how this would work. Like let's say you're going to put me on the hook for any material increases, or maybe there's consequential damages in the contract. This is one of the big red flags for me. So let me get this straight. Here's the way I see it. It reads consequential damages, which the way I understand that means if the owner has lost revenue or any kind of damages, they're going to hit you with it. You're going to pass it on to me. So tell me how that's going to work. Just kind of walk me through that. Am I seeing this right? And sometimes they'll say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we don't want to do that. And they just haven't looked at it. So having them explain it to you and let them hear themselves say, wow, that's pretty unreasonable. I don't think any of us want to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't really seem fair.
Like, yeah, that's a good point. Let me go see what I can do. Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. Any other let's talk about negotiation tactics, right? So I recently read and have listened to Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, over and over and over, which I highly recommend. A lot of good negotiation strategies. But what's your what's your best negotiation tactic? Whether it's here's how you bring something up. Do you have a ninja level negotiation tactic that you can share for us? If it's not like giving away the secret sauce too much.
Well, I have a secret one that I use sometimes because it's not really a negotiation. Like if I did this for a subcontractor client, which I knew that they weren't going to negotiate. So when he got the subcontract, it was a PDF, and I went in and changed the PDF, and he signed it and sent it back. Just because I knew that they weren't going to. I didn't change anything drastically. I altered the pay when paid clause. What I do is, I'll bring it up. We'll have a discussion about it. Try to offer something in the middle. Try to do something that I've explained in plain English, but, and if you just bring up the point and how, like you said, how one-sided it is, normally they'll deal with you like consequential damages or, the pay when paid clause. It just, how do you base your payment on a project on something that's completely out of your control? Yeah. In no other field does anybody ever do that.
Yeah. I remember seeing there was a subcontract agreement that I saw, and it said the remedy, if the subcontractor wasn't paid, okay, the only remedy allowed was to charge 1.5% interest per month. If they didn't get paid, they couldn't stop work. It said they had to continue work if they didn't get paid. So I'm like, you guys, and everybody signed it. Like everybody on this project signed it. Did you guys read this? Did you think through this? All right, I'm going to get like $3 million into this project. I'm going to finance this project for $3 million. And the only thing I can do is finish the work and charge interest. Did you guys think this through? So that's a big one. We definitely want to talk about pay when paid clauses, but what are some of the other big red flags that you look for and say, hold on, we really need to talk about this?
Termination for convenience clauses. I don't like those. And I say that on that one, I recommend, okay, if you're going to do that, I get the same right. Either you can terminate for cause, or I get the same right to terminate the contract for convenience. That's just so one-sided. That's one of them. The pay when paid clause we went over. The bid and scope, I'm trying to remember all of them. Reasonably inferred is another big one. The other provision in there, you have a duty to investigate before you start your work and point out the errors of the subs before you. And if you don't, they become your errors. And so, I suggest some language in the Subcontractor Institute and in the book that says, yes, I'll investigate and I will let you know. But if I miss something, if there's something I don't see, I'm not going to take responsibility for it. Because you see what happens is that you see the lawsuit where all the subs get sued, even if their scope, there was nothing wrong with their scope. And that's how they get there. You accept the guy before you, and it just boils down to, and what it is, it's a bigger pot for the owner because everybody's insurance steps in and then your insurance pays out and your insurance goes up. I think that's definitely one of the most hurtful things in a subcontract. And so there's some in the book in the Subcontractor Institute, there's some ways to identify those. The other one that I did already kind of address is if there's things that beyond your control that cause you delay damages or cause you more expenses, as they're currently written now, you won't get reimbursed for those at all. And so changing that provision, if there's something, saying if there's something that delays my performance or my schedule because of something else, I'm entitled to recover those costs as well as get a change order to the schedule for more days. So, the schedule is another huge one because that schedule that's attached to the subcontract is what delay damages are based on. And so people just take for granted that, oh yeah, this is a schedule, I'm agreeing to it. They're not really going to hold me responsible for it until the end of the project when they want to back charge you a couple grand and they'll be like, yeah, you didn't finish on time. And so, so that schedule is so important, and keeping up with the schedule. Change orders is another huge one. Yeah. Don't ever do extra work without getting a written change order, or you're doing it for free. Like I said, charity is no place for a business, in a business transaction. And that's what ends up happening if you do extra work. So
Yeah,
Those are just some of the ones that stick out to me.
yeah, definitely. The change order issue comes up all the time. Projects are fast paced. Let's say it's a school project. Change orders can't be approved until the next school board meeting. So it's like, yeah, just go take care of it. Just do the work. It's got to be done like this week to keep things moving, and we'll get you taken care of. Big red flag right there. So listen, subcontract has an agreement. Our agreement has term language about how we handle changes. Let's just follow that. And if there's a delay associated with it, then you're going to have to deal with that. It's not my problem. So it's not the subcontractor's problem to just absorb all of that risk. It's perfectly okay for you to say, I can't do it. I will gladly do it with a signed change order. It can be an estimated change order, can be something, but I can't take this risk. So that's my advice to subcontractors is just because the superintendent's going to push you to do it doesn't mean you have to just absorb that. The other one to watch out for would be this, when it comes to delays, there are excusable delays and then there are compensable delays. So excusable means, sure, we'll give you more days. If we delay you, then we'll give you more days on the schedule, but we're not going to pay you for it. So you're not going to get additional general conditions or downtime or anything like that. So compensable delays means we're going to pay you for the extra time. Excusable just says we're not going to hit you with liquidated damages. And what I've found, I've looked at some subcontracts and seen some clauses and thought, this is so crazy. I must be reading it wrong. And that just can't be true. There's no way anybody would enforce that. And they won't until there's a lawsuit, until the lawyers get involved. No offense, but that's when the shit hits the fan. So
Well, I agree. And like I said, I don't think these things got so bad on purpose, but they're at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, they're there to screw it to you. I mean, I don't think it'd be plans in going to use all these horrible provisions, but like the trial that I had that motivated me to write this book was, my client had done everything right and still lost because of the subcontract. He lost because he didn't send daily reports and he was in breach of the contract. He lost because he didn't, the little things in the, he didn't send the transmittal letters. He didn't get, all of that put him in default. And then they didn't have to pay him under the terms of the contract. And so you don't realize how essential and one-sided these things are. They don't intend to, but if they have it, they will use it. And you get in a dispute and they will use it, and they will use it to put you out of business, usually at the end of the day.
Definitely. Sorry, I need to pause for about 30 seconds. I will be right back and we'll pick up with that. Thanks. No. Okay. So, when attorneys get involved, I had a situation. I came into a project that was already into liquidated damages. It was like 30% complete. The time was all expired. And the company that brought me in, they were just stomping up and down saying, but we had these meetings for weeks and the project was flooded and all these things. And everybody at the progress meetings said, yeah, no problem. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. And then the city attorney got involved and he's sticking it to us. And well, when the attorney gets involved, all he had to look at was the contract and the documents, and his job was to carry out the contract. And my client hadn't done any documentation. They hadn't submitted any change orders. They didn't follow the request for additional time. They just didn't manage the project. And they ended up getting hit with about $76,000 worth of liquidated damages. And it was their fault. That was the bad part. So let's talk. We've been talking about the pay when paid clause. Can you unpack that a little bit and talk about how to go about negotiating a pay when paid clause, what some of the issues are, and how people need to think about it?
Okay, I think it's important that we start off with the pay when paid clause wasn't always there. Used to be the general contractor hired you, they paid you no matter what. The pay when paid clause has really tipped construction projects on their head. Now, instead of the owner financing the project, you have the subcontractors financing the project because they put out the money, they put out the labor, the materials, and then wait to get paid. So they're the one credit waiting to get paid. And so this has really flipped everything upside down. And it is so very dangerous because these guys don't realize, number one, that they're in there. Number two, how long could you keep operating? Because most contracts have the pay when paid. You don't get to stop if you haven't been paid. So not only have you not been paid for the work that you've done, you have to keep going. Otherwise, you'll be in default. So it's a double whammy on how dangerous these things are. And so I understand the general contractor's point. They want to mitigate their risk. I get it, but you can't put it all on subs. So, I have in the book and in the Subcontractor Institute, I have 3 different suggestions on how you can negotiate and the language in there to do that. The first one is, after 45 days, if the general contractor has not been paid by the owner, and I, the sub, am not the reason that is not happening, then I still can get paid 100% of my draw. All right. And then the second one is the same thing, except, okay, you pay me 50% of my draw. And the third one is, okay, it's been 45 days. I still haven't been paid. GC, you're going to reimburse me to file a lien against the owner. So that way there's some middle ground. There's some protection there, because just as the way these pay when paid clauses are written, there's absolutely no protection for the sub. I mean, there could be many reasons, like that the GC is not getting paid. The flooring guy screwed up the whole project, and the owner quit paying the GC altogether. And it's not your fault, and you're not getting paid, and and you're still supposed to keep working. And so these things, and we could also add in something in there, if we haven't been paid and it's not our fault, then we have the right to stop working. At least we'll stop the bleeding. Another thing also to build in with those negotiations, again, know your lien rights. Because even if there's a pay when paid clause, you can still go up and above that and file a lien if you haven't been paid. And what I tell my clients is there's nothing wrong with being early for filing a lien. You only get penalized if you're late. So the sooner you let the owner know, the better. So.
Okay, good stuff. So we talked about trust, and ultimately contracts. Well, the way projects get done is based on trust, and typically people unfortunately, they only get their agreements out when things go sideways, and then they start looking at ways to get back at or get where they think they should be. What are some common sense strategies for establishing trust between GCs and subcontractors?
I mean, I think it can be there. Brene Brown has this saying when it comes to employees and leaders, is that being clear is kind. And honestly, if we could get together and negotiate a subcontract that is in plain English, that each side understood. I don't think, like you said, it's not until things go south that they realize they have all this ammunition in this contract. If subs knew what were expected of them as far as change order scope, termination, they could, it's a 12, everything that the general contractors want could be in a 12 or 13 page document that both sides could understand. And I think you could get so much more work done. You'd have less problems because people would understand what they're being hired to do. And it really opens up the line of communication, which is, back in the day when things was done on a handshake, this is how it worked. You told me what you want, and don't get me wrong, I think there has to be a written agreement so the expectations can be withheld on both sides. Not everybody's perfect. I get it. But I think you can really build the trust and the relationship by having a document that explains what I'm supposed to do, that I understand and that you understand, and that so we know going into this what's expected from each other.
One of the things that's a strategy that I've heard that makes a lot of sense is you have your subcontract agreement, which is the legalese, and then you have a subcontractor handbook or a trade partner handbook that says, this is how we're going to work together. Right? These are the expectations. This is plain English. We're going to have a coordination meeting once a week. You need to send this person and this person and this person. We need to know about issues. Here's how we're going to handle this kind of stuff. Here's how payments handled. Plain language. And we're going to agree on this handbook of how we're going to work together. It's going to be backed up by a legal agreement. But I think clarity is huge. And my advice to general contractors is, you may think you're being onerous by spending time and getting them. I have some clients who don't use agreements at all. They just actually work with subcontractors. They get a bid and then say, go. Then they pay from an invoice, and they think, I don't want to be onerous and get them to sign a contract. And I say, you're actually being kind to them. And by being clear and saying, this is exactly what I want. Here's a clear definition of the work, the scope that I want you to get done. Here are the payment terms. Here's how we're going to do it. You're actually being kind. You're being unkind to your trade partners by just leaving them out there flapping around in the wind without some kind of agreement that clearly defines what they're going to do. So that's good stuff. I like that. Being clear is kind.
That's Brene Brown's. And like I said, these guys are usually so good at what they do, and the dream comes about, they're usually working from somebody before and they say like, I could do this so much better. And so they go out and do that so much better. And then they don't realize all the strings that come attached and all the dangers that are out there. It's not being awesome at what you do and having great customer service, unfortunately, isn't enough. That you need other tools that are how to run a successful business and make sure you don't sign a subcontract that's going to put you out of business. And so I'm trying to enable them to know what to look for to do that on their own.
I like it. So we're going to talk about your book in a few minutes, but talk about the Subcontractor Institute that you've set up. How did it come about and what is it?
Well, it all came about from, I have a soft spot for subcontractors. My whole family my grandfather built golf courses. He was an excavator. My stepfather was an excavator in the union, my whole life. These are the people that build things. They're the ones that are actually out there doing it, making things, grow and happen, and they deserve to be protected. And, for the first, 10 years of my legal career, I thought I could fight it in court. I thought I could just say, hey, this is so wrong. It shouldn't happen. And I would lose every time because I signed this contract. And at the end of the day, what you sign will be used against you. And so, I had a big trial in January and the client went out of business. I'm like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be something. And so I'm like, all right, well, we got to catch them before they sign the subcontract so that they know that these things are really an issue. And so that started with an idea about writing a book, telling them what the dangers are. And then that turned into, well, what else could we do? So the Subcontractor Institute currently has 20 classes that are all on the subcontract, that are the same 20 chapters that are in the book that I teach, with, additional forms and a question and answer type thing. And the plan is this is just the first of many in the series. The next one to roll out will be collections. It'll be for a Texas subcontractor because that's what I know. And then there's going to be one for employment. So basically, what the Subcontractor Institute does, and what my law firm tries to do, is be a partner in business to the subcontractor, to really be there to know their specific needs, and be there to answer the phone when they have a question. Hey, should I sign this lien waiver? Should I not? To help them know what to look for. If they need more help, they can call us. But in order to run a successful subcontracting business, you need to know about these things and have a partner that'll help you through them. And so the Subcontractor Institute sets you up to know what to look for. And then if you need further help, the law firm can help you. But it's designed to, just enhance your business from the understanding of being, employment and the subcontract and all of the things that go into being an informed and successful subcontractor.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea of, hey, this is what to look for. And here's some training to help you find those things that you really need to be concerned about. And then the second step is, here's who to call if you have help or you need help. Because I have talked to so many subcontractors who have been in a situation where they didn't know what to do. They've never been there before. The learning curve is extremely steep, extremely painful, could be an extinction level event on the other side of it. And they don't know who to talk to. And that's not the time to go look for an attorney. That's for sure. So,
and I know attorneys have a bad rap. And I started a hashtag a few years ago that's attorneys don't suck, because not all of us suck. I pride myself on everybody at my firm. We return phone calls within 24 hours. We realize that the success of your business at a point depends on what our information, our input that we're going to give you. So our clients are always our top priority and their questions. And we really focus in everything. And all of this is to do what's best for the company, which is not our billable hour, right? We want to get you out of disputes in a way that makes sense for your company. I'm not going to push you to litigation if there's no collection possibilities, or if it's going to cost you more to litigate than it is to collect your money, or, and these are all things that I don't think every lawyer's honest about.
Unfortunately, I agree. So, and I'm trying to bite my tongue. I have some feelings about attorneys, but I'll keep them to my. I don't want to
I
generalize.
understand. I have a goal and I write it down every day. I want to create my own industry, which is, like I said, to be a partner in business and to be somebody that returns the phone call. And, because it won't take me very long to depart from my competition if I do these things. But because I really want to protect those thousands of hours those people spend away from their family building their business, because I know what it's like. It's your whole life. That's what you do. You're building this for your family, for your future, and it deserves to be protected. And it's important, and somebody should pay attention to it. If you have a question, you should be able to get an answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's tragic that people build a business and invest tens of thousands of hours in a business only to have it all taken away because of some words in a subcontract agreement on one project. Yeah, that's tragic. So people can find out more about the Subcontractor Institute over at subcontractorinstitute.com. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have some free resources there. What are they going to get if they go there?
I have, there's a free resources link that has a itemized bid form. It has lien waivers. It has some draft letters that all goes hand in hand that are completely free. I think I asked for your email address so I can send you some more stuff. But there's tons of stuff there that is plenty free there. So
great. And then you also have a full course if people want to do a deeper dive into all of that. So yeah, great stuff there. So subcontractorinstitute.com for all of those details. Highly recommend you go there, grab those free resources. Talk about the book. I love the title, Quit Getting Screwed, Understanding and Negotiating the Subcontract. I like, clarity over cleverness. Quit getting screwed. There's even a screw on the cover there. So quit getting screwed. Talk about this book. What's behind it, and what are people going to get out of it when they read it?
They're going to get all the things they need to look for when negotiating a subcontract. The little things, the big things, the things that they can do while the project's going on to save them later on. This is the outline. There's 20 classes in the Subcontractor Institute, which is one for each chapter. So basically, if you don't want to read the book, I will teach it to you in video form on the Subcontractor Institute. But therein lies the keys of, if you're going to sign a subcontract that's currently the way it is, how to know to negotiate, how to deal with it if you've already signed it, and things like that. Is really a tool to help subcontractors know before they sign the subcontract what's in there, that nobody's protecting them. They got to do it themselves. I picked the title because I wanted to bring attention to this, because I really think that if we get the two parties together, we can come up with a contract that doesn't have to be this way. But I don't think I could get there by being nice. So I just have to be blunt.
Yeah. Well, you've got to catch attention, and that'll do it. Where can people get the book, Quit Getting Screwed?
On Amazon. Just type in Quit Getting Screwed and it'll come up, or my name. It launched actually today, January 12th. So,
oh, wow. How exciting.
Today's my launch day. Yes, very exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Written a book. I know, it's always been a goal of mine to write a book. I never thought it was going to happen. And it did. And so I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about writing a book. Selfishly, I've got some book ideas, but what's your, now that you've gone through this process, what's your number one piece of advice or takeaway from writing a book?
Do an outline and then set a time. However, I'm good for like maybe 2 hours on straight writing. Block that time, shut everything else out, and just do it. Every day, just do it. Every day, just do it. And then you'll get a draft, and you can go from there. And there's companies that'll help you edit it and publish it. But first, you need the words. There's some great books out there on how to outline the book. And so what I did is I listed all the ideas that I wanted to cover, and then you can outline each chapter and then just dive in. And actually, I've never been very good at typing. So this this book, I had to handwrite and then type because I couldn't think and type at the same time. So it was a long process. But the main thing is just do it. Just write the words. Because you can do it. And everybody just thinks, oh my God, it's a book. It's so overwhelming. How am I going to write it? And you write it 500 words at a time, 250 words at a time. That's, I started, like I said, I had this dream about writing this book in November of 19. And I wrote. And I'm not the most eloquent writer. I'm kind of blunt, but it works. But the secret is just block out that time. And no matter what, you write for that time.
Just write.
Yep. Yes, just write.
Yeah, you got to get started. Yeah, great advice. Well, I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So where people need to go is the subcontractorinstitute.com. Get some free resources there. Check out the book, Quit Getting Screwed. I'll have these links in the show notes as well. If people want to connect with you, is there somewhere else they can go, like LinkedIn, if they want to follow you, social media, any other websites that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn under Karalynn Cromeens. The Subcontractor Institute also has LinkedIn and all the Instagram and Facebook. So does the Cromeens Law Firm, CromeensLawFirm.com. If you need more help than what's there, we're also here to help you there. So all of those places, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform because I like to see what everybody's doing out in the business world.
Good stuff. Well, I really appreciate the work you're doing to help subcontractors and ultimately help the whole industry. And thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast, Karalynn. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. Remember, this is all about implementation. A lot of good information here. Some of this may have alarmed you a little bit if you're a subcontractor, or if you're a general contractor. You may want to take a look at your subcontract agreement. Maybe you have some onerous clauses in your subcontract or trade partner agreements. It's time to take a look at that stuff and let's establish some trust. Take the stuff out of there that doesn't really need to be there, that's not really equitable, but take action on this. Be sure to go check out her website, subcontractorinstitute.com. Check out the book, Quit Getting Screwed. All the links are in the show notes for this episode. As always, I appreciate the ratings, the reviews. If you could take a moment, take about 60 seconds and leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, it would mean a lot to me, and it also helps get the word out there. Be sure to check out those resources that I talked about earlier. And as always, my name is Todd DeWalt. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. Are you preparing to purchase materials? Why would you settle for 30-day terms or worse, no terms at all, when you can have 120-day terms with any of your suppliers? Finally, a finance partner built for contractors. Learn more at BILLD.com. That's build.com/CLE. Be sure to check out their project cash flow estimator that you can use to calculate how much cash you're going